a cold hand clamps onto his shoulder. He screams, falling to the dirt. Lightning cracks across the sky, illuminating a tall figure standing before him. Its body is humanoid, stretched too long, its face hidden in heavy shadow. The figure tilts its head in a slow, unnatural motion. Another whisper, now at his ear. He scrambles backward on the ground, heart pounding. Roots burst from the soil, wrapping around his ankles. He thrashes, kicks, screams, but the forest itself holds him tight. The figure bends lower, its face inches from his. Another flash of lightning reveals the impossibly its face is his own. Pale, distorted, smiling. He gasps in horror, but no sound escapes. The forest falls into an unnatural silence. No wind, no insects, nothing. The figure rises taller, towering over him. Its hand stretches out, long fingers brushing his face. Everywhere its touch lingers, his skin turns pale and lifeless. He struggles, but the roots tighten, dragging him slowly into the ground. The flashlight lies nearby, flickering faintly. He reaches for it, but his arm is too heavy, his strength draining. His hand trembles, stopping short. The figure crouches again, pressing its shadowed face against his ear. The whisper becomes a growl. "Now you belong here?" The forest groans as the earth splits beneath him. He sinks into the dirt, his screams muffled by soil filling his mouth. The roots drag him down until only his hand is left, reaching out, then it too disappears. The forest goes still. Only the weak glow of the flashlight remains, sputtering on the ground. It flickers, flickers, then dies. Black screen. The whisper lingers one last time, in the dark, forever. The forest stretches endlessly, the trees skeletal against the moonless sky. A lone man moves cautiously through the undergrowth, a weak flashlight his only guide. The beam flickers, sputtering like a dying candle. Each step crunches too loudly on the damp soil, and each sound makes him flinch. The wind cuts through the trees, but beneath it he swears he hears whispers, faint and broken. He stops, scanning the darkness. Behind him, a sharp snap of a branch. He whirls around. Nothing. The woods stare back in silence. His breath clouds in the cold air, ragged and fast. A whisper floats to him from nowhere, low and chilling. Go back. He spins again, but sees only shifting shadows. He tries to steady his breathing, but another sound rises, breathing that is not his own. Slow and heavy, just over his shoulder, heart pounding, he bolts deeper into the forest. Branches whip at his face, thorns claw at his jacket. The flashlight dims, flutters, then dies, plunging him into total darkness. The silence is suffocating. Then ice-cold fingers seize his shoulder. He screams, stumbling to the ground. Lightning splits the sky for an instant, and in that flash he sees it. A towering figure. Human in form, but wrong, stretched, bent, face hidden in shadow. The figure tilts its head in a sharp, unnatural angle. The whisper returns, closer this time, brushing his ear. Stay! He crawls backward, palms scraping against rocks. The earth trembles beneath him. Roots explode from the soil, wrapping around his ankles, dragging him toward the ground. He thrashes, clawing at the dirt, but the roots pull tighter. Above him, the figure leans closer. Lightning cracks again, and this time its face is revealed his own. His features, twisted, pale, grinning. His scream dies in his throat. The forest holds its breath. Not even the wind dares to move. The figure crouches, pressing its long fingers to his cheek. Wherever it touches, his skin drains of color, cold spreading through his veins. His body weakens, his arm trembling as he reaches desperately for the flashlight, lying just out of reach. The beam flickers weakly, mocking him. The figure's voice changes, deep and guttural, yet still familiar, his own voice, echoing back. You can't run from yourself. The ground splits open beneath him. The roots drag him down, soil filling his mouth as he chokes, struggling for air. His screams are swallowed by the earth. His hands claw upward, but soon even they disappear beneath the dirt. For a long moment, nothing moves. Then, from the shadows, the figure straightens, standing tall, silent. The flashlight flickers on the ground, casting long beams across the twisted trees. Slowly, the light grows dimmer, dimmer, until it dies completely. Darkness, then another beam of light. The screen fills with a different man, walking the same path, holding a new flashlight. His steps crunch on the damp soil. He looks over his shoulder as a whisper brushes the air. Go back, and the cycle begins again. The forest breathes, it never sleeps. Beneath the canopy, the soil is damp and restless, as though something beneath it is waiting to rise. The first man was taken. The second group followed, swallowed in the same silence. Hours later, the search widens. A local sheriff arrives with 2 deputies and a rescue dog. Their truck rumbles down the narrow path, headlights straining against the fog. They step out, radios crackling faintly. The dog growls before they even reach the tree line. The sheriff steadies his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the dirt road. He finds a lantern, still glowing faintly. Mudstains cover it. One deputy mutters that it looks fresh. The dog begins to bark violently, pulling toward the woods. Against his better judgment, the sheriff leads them in. The deeper they go, the quieter it becomes. No insects, no owls, just silence. Then, faintly, a voice calls for help. The deputies freeze. The sheriff raises his gun, whispering for them to stay sharp. The voice calls again. Weak, broken, please, help me. They follow the sound beams of light trembling on the trees. In the distance, they see him, the missing man, kneeling in the dirt, face hidden by his hands. The sheriff calls out. Slowly, the man lifts his head. His face is pale, lips cracked, eyes glassy. In a hollow voice, he whispers, "Stay." The dog whines, tail tucked. The deputies back away, but the sheriff raises his weapon, demanding the man get on the ground. The man grins, mud dripping from his mouth. Behind him, something rises from the soil, a tall figure, stretching upward, limbs unfolding like broken branches. The deputies open fire. Bullets tear into the figure, but it does not bleed. It does not move. Instead, the earth beneath them quakes, roots erupting from the ground, wrapping around their legs. The dog yelps as it's dragged into the shadows. The sheriff fires again, but the figure tilts its head, wearing his own face now. The roots tighten, dragging one deputy screaming into the earth. The second vanishes seconds later, his flashlight tumbling to the ground. The sheriff struggles, firing wildly, until his gun clicks empty. His body jerks as unseen hands drag him backward into the trees. His screams cut short, silence returns. The forest reclaims what it has taken. At dawn, townsfolk gather near the path. The search has grown into a desperate hunt. Among them is a young girl, no more than 10, clutching her mother's hand. The girl whispers that her father went into the forest last night and hasn't come back. The others reassure her, but her eyes remain fixed on the tree line. She says she heard him calling her name in her dreams. That night, despite warnings, the girl slips from her bed and walks barefoot into the forest. The moon is full now, casting pale light between the trees. She carries only a small toy lantern, its glow faint but steady. Unlike the others, she does not run when she hears the whisper. She pauses, listening. Go back, it sighs. But she shakes her head and whispers back, no. The forest stills, as though surprised. Shadows bend around her path, watching. A pale figure emerges, tilting its head. The girl looks up at it calmly. It bends low, its face morphing first her father's, then strangers', then hers. For the first time, the figure hesitates. The ground trembles, roots stirring, but the girl kneels and places her lantern on the soil. Its glow spreads wider than it should, pushing back the shadows. The figure recoils slightly, whispering her name. She whispers back, "You don't belong here." The forest shudders, groaning like a wounded beast. Dozens of pale hands stretch from the earth. The faces of the missing appearing among the trees, their mouths open in silent screams. The girl clutches her lantern tighter, light spilling through the forest, illuminating the endless hollow faces. The figure screeches, a sound like splitting stone, and lunges forward. The light flares. For an instant, every tree bends backward, as if trying to flee. The hands retreat, the roots shrivel, the faces vanish. The figure collapses into the soil, swallowed by its own forest. The girl trembles, but does not cry. She picks up her lantern, now dim, and walks back toward the path. Behind her, the forest groans one last time, then grows still. By morning, the girl is found asleep at the edge of the road, lantern still in hand. No one believes her story, yet deep in the forest, beneath the roots, whispers stir once more. A voice rises, faint but growing. Stay, the cycle is never broken, only paused. The forest was older than the town, older than the roads, the graves, the churches, even the first whispers of maps. Locals called it hollow pines, though no one could say why. The trees were not pines. They were crooked oaks, skeletal and black, their branches twisting like broken arms. Few dared to enter at night. Those who did rarely returned. And if they did return, they were different. The story begins with a man named Daniel. Daniel was not a believer in superstition. He was 30, tired, and desperate. His younger brother had vanished into hollow pines 3 days earlier. The sheriff claimed he was just another runaway, but Daniel knew better. His brother had called him the night before he disappeared. He had whispered, "There's something in the forest. It keeps calling me." That was the last time Daniel heard his voice. Now, with nothing but a flashlight, Daniel entered Hollow Pines. The night was colder than it should have been. His breath came out in heavy clouds, curling in the air like smoke. Each step crunched on damp leaves. The beam of his flashlight shook in his hand. The trees pressed closer with every step. He could feel them watching. Somewhere in the distance, an owl screeched, then fell silent. Then a snap of a branch. Daniel froze. Slowly he turned. Nothing but blackness. His throat tightened. "Andrew?" he whispered, calling his brother's name. No answer. Just the creak of trees shifting in the wind. Then a whisper drifted through the dark. It wasn't the wind. It was a voice that hissed, "Go back." Daniel's heart slammed in his chest. His flashlight sputtered, beam flickering weakly. He spun in circles, searching. The voice came again, closer, "Go back." Daniel stumbled backward. His foot struck a root, and he nearly fell. The flashlight shook wildly, illuminating only flashes of twisted bark. He shouted, "Who's there?" The forest did not answer. Instead, another sound joined breathing, slow, rasping, not his own. Daniel spun toward the sound, light trembling, and there, between two trees, something stood. Tall, still, human-shaped, but wrong. Its head tilted to one side, as though its neck had broken long ago. Daniel raised the beam. The light caught its face, and the face was his own. Daniel stumbled backward, his breath ripping out of his chest in jagged gasps. The face staring back at him was his own, but distorted, stretched as though molded from clay by trembling hands. Its lips peeled into a smile that didn't belong on him. The thing didn't move forward, but the shadows around it seemed to crawl closer with every blink. The flashlight flickered violently. Daniel smacked the side of it, desperate to keep it alive. For one fleeting second, the beam died completely. In the darkness, the sound of bones cracking filled the silence. When the light returned, the figure was gone. Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. He spun in circles, panting, the beam searching wildly across the undergrowth. "Andrew," he shouted, his voice cracking. The forest swallowed the name and spat it back as an echo. Then came the breathing again, this time directly behind him. He whipped the light around. Nothing, only trees, crooked and endless. His legs carried him before his mind caught up, sprinting through the brush, flashlight bouncing in his grip. Branches whipped at his face, clawing his skin. Every shadow looked alive, every root like a hand reaching for his ankles. He tripped and fell hard onto the cold ground. The flashlight rolled from his grasp, its beam pointing upward at the black canopy of trees. Daniel scrambled to grab it, but before he could, the earth beneath him shifted. The soil pulsed, rising and falling like the slow breath of some buried creature. A whisper seeped from the ground itself. "Stay." Daniel's stomach clenched as he crawled backward. The earth split, thin cracks, zigzagging through the dirt. Fingers pale, skeletal pushed through the cracks. One hand, then another, then dozens. They reached blindly, grasping at air. The flashlight blinked again, dimming. Daniel's hands fumbled against the soil, trying to push himself up. One of the pale hands caught his ankle. Cold shot through him like ice water. He kicked violently, ripping free, and stumbled to his feet. Lightning lit up the sky in a violent flash. For the briefest instant, the trees were no longer trees. They were faces. Dozens of faces twisted into the bark, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Daniel staggered tripping again, the flashlight bouncing across the dirt. The faces vanished when the light faded, but their memory burned in his mind. Then a voice, not the whisper, a voice he knew. "Daniel," he froze. It was his brother's voice, weak, trembling, but unmistakable. He turned toward the sound, chest heaving. Through the trees, just beyond the reach of the dying flashlight, a figure stood. Smaller, slouched. "Andrew." Daniel's voice cracked. The figure stepped closer, The face came into view. His brother, eyes sunken, skin pale as wax, lips trembling. He raised a hand as if begging for help. "Please, don't leave me here." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. He staggered forward, reaching. His hand almost touched Andrew's when the figure jerked suddenly, like a puppet on strings. His mouth opened too wide. "Stay," the voice hissed, but it was not Andrew's voice anymore. Its face shifted and warped until Daniel saw his own again. The flashlight finally died. Darkness swallowed everything. The darkness swallowed Daniel whole. For a moment, he could hear nothing but his own heartbeat, hammering against his ribs like a trapped animal. His hands groped blindly across the ground for the flashlight, but his fingers found only wet soil and roots that felt too much like veins. The forest had gone completely silent. No wind, no crickets, nothing. Then came the sound of movement. Not footsteps, something slower, heavier. A dragging, as though something immense was pulling itself closer across the earth. Daniel froze, breath locked in his throat. He wanted to run, but every nerve in his body told him that if he moved, the thing would know exactly where he was. A cold breath tickled the back of his neck. He spun, hand swinging wildly, but his fist met only empty air. His eyes strained in the dark, trying to shape shadows into meaning. The forest seemed alive now, branches shifting like skeletal arms, trunks bending ever so slightly toward him, Andrew. Daniel whispered again, his voice small, broken, more prayer than call. Something whispered back. Not his brother. Not human. The word came again, low and commanding. "Stay." The ground beneath Daniel pulsed. He dropped to his knees, palms pressing against the soil, feeling it swell and sink as if the forest itself were breathing. From the cracks in the dirt, pale fingers slid upward once more. Dozens, then hundreds, reaching in silence. Daniel screamed and scrambled away, but the hands followed, clawing at his boots, at his jacket, trying to drag him down. He threw himself toward where he thought the flashlight had rolled. His hand struck the cold metal, and with desperate force, he flicked it back on. The beam exploded into life-weak, sputtering but enough to make the hands recoil. They snapped back into the soil with a hiss, vanishing beneath the surface as though they had never been. But the light also revealed something worse. The trees ahead were no longer trees. Their bark writhed, rippling with the impressions of faces. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, eyes, bulging mouths, stretched in silent agony, pressed into the wood like prisoners beneath glass. Their mouths opened and closed in unison, and though no sound came at first, Daniel felt words clawing their way into his mind. "Join us, join us." He staggered backward, light trembling across their contorted features. His gut churned with horror, but some part of him could not look away. Each face seemed familiar. A neighbor, a classmate, someone from the diner in town. People who had vanished, their disappearances whispered about for years, all dismissed as accidents or escapes. But they hadn't escaped, they had been taken. The forest wasn't haunted, it was hungry. Daniel spun and ran, pushing through branches that lashed his face and tore at his clothes. The flashlight beam bounced wildly, sometimes illuminating only inches ahead, sometimes catching fleeting glimpses of movement in the periphery, something tall, impossibly tall, keeping pace with him between the trees. Every time he looked, it was gone, but the sound of cracking bones followed, echoing all around him. He burst into a small clearing, chest heaving. Moonlight spilled weakly into the open space, silver and cold. For the first time since stepping into Hollow Pines, he thought he had found a place where the trees could not close in on him, but relief lasted only a second. In the center of the clearing stood an object, a lantern, his brother's lantern. It was upright, glowing faintly, its light far steadier than Daniel's dying flashlight. He staggered toward it, hope flooding him. "Andrew," he shouted again, voice breaking. But as he reached out to grab the lantern, the light dimmed. A shadow stretched across the clearing, rising tall and bent. The figure unfolded from the ground itself, limbs cracking as it stood. Daniel lifted the flashlight, his hand trembling violently. The light struck the figure's face, and for the third time, it was his own face staring back. But now, it wasn't grinning. It was weeping. The tears on its cheeks were black, thick as tar. Its mouth opened wider and wider until the jaw split unnaturally, dangling loose. The voice that came from within was layered, dozens of voices speaking at once. Some were strangers, some he recognized. One was Andrew's. "You shouldn't have come." Daniel's knees buckled. He wanted to scream, to beg, to run, but the roots in the soil surged again, wrapping around his ankles, pinning him in place. The figure moved closer, towering, bending down until its gaping mouth was inches from his face. The flashlight sputtered. Daniel squeezed it desperately, but the beam weakened, shrinking, fading. The roots climbed higher, wrapping around his legs, his waist, his chest. He could barely breathe. The figure leaned close, its shadowed mouth filling his vision. The whisper came again. The roots coiled tighter, pulling Daniel against the earth, as though the forest itself wanted to swallow him whole. The soil pressed against his back, damp and breathing, alive with a pulse that beat in rhythm with his hammering chest. He tried to scream, but the air thinned in his throat, his voice caught between a cry and a whimper. The figure leaned closer, the lantern's pale glow bleeding across its skin. Its face shifted, not his own this time, his mother's, her lips trembling. Then his brother's, then the sheriff's. A carousel of faces, morphing with each flicker of the lantern. Each face opened its mouth, but no sound. Came only the same whisper, layered again and again. Stay, stay, stay. The sound filled Daniel's ears until it drilled into the marrow of his bones. The roots slid higher, coiling around his chest and shoulders, pressing him down into the soil. Daniel's arms thrashed weakly, fingertips brushing the flashlight that had rolled into the dirt. His nails scraped the cold metal. He gripped it, clutching it like a lifeline, but the light was nearly gone, its beam faint and trembling. Still, he held it against his chest, as if it could shield him from the dark. The figure bent low, so close Daniel could smell the damp rot of its breath. It whispered, but now the words were different. "We have waited for you." Daniel shook his head violently, choking on dirt. "No," he rasped. "I'm not T.I. Don't belong here." The forest groaned in answer. The trees bent inward, their branches weaving together overhead until the clearing sealed shut like the lid of a coffin. Faces bulged in the bark, their mouths opening wider, and though he couldn't hear them with his ears, Daniel heard their screams echoing inside his skull. Something tugged at his mind, a cold pressure like fingers prying open his thoughts. He saw flashes that weren't his own faces of strangers he had never met, stumbling through the same forest, screaming the same way, dragged into the same dirt. Their memories pressed into him, suffocating him, drowning him in lives that had ended here long before his. Daniel's vision blurred. The forest spun around him. His own memories tangled with the intruding ones until he could not tell if he was himself anymore. The voice spoke again, closer now, crawling inside his head. "You were always part of us." Something inside him cracked. His body sagged against the roots, his strength leaking away. He wanted to resist, but part of him deep down felt an awful recognition. Like he had been here before, like this had happened already. And then, through the suffocating noise, he heard it. A voice, faint and broken, but his heart knew it instantly. Daniel. His brother's voice, clearer this time, real. It cut through the whispers like a knife. Daniel's eyes snapped open. He twisted his head toward the trees. There, just beyond the wall of branches, a figure stood, smaller, thinner, Andrew, his brother, his eyes wide, face pale, but alive. "Fight it," Andrew whispered. "Don't let it keep you." For the first time, the tall figure hesitated. Its head jerked, twisting sharply toward Andrew, its body trembling in violent spasms. The forest hissed like an angry animal. The roots constricting, Daniel shuddered, loosening for the briefest moment. With a ragged scream, Daniel raised the flashlight. The beam, weak and pitiful, flared one last time. Light spilled across the figure's face, and the illusion shattered. It was no longer his face, or his brother's, or anyone's. The light revealed the truth's, skinless, eyeless, a hollow maw where its face should have been, gaping and endless. The creature shrieked, a sound that split the clearing, rattling the trees and sending splinters raining from the canopy. The roots recoiled, releasing Daniel with a violent snap. He rolled onto his side, coughing dirt from his lungs, clutching the dead flashlight like a weapon. When he looked up again, Andrew was gone. Only the whisper remained, softer this time, carried through the trees. "Stay." Daniel staggered to his feet, chest heaving. The clearing was empty. The lantern had vanished. The figure was nowhere to be seen. But he knew it wasn't over. The forest didn't let go, not fully. Somewhere in the darkness, something was waiting, and now it wanted him more than ever. Daniel staggered through the forest, half running, half stumbling, his breath ragged and uneven. His clothes clung to him, damp with sweat and soil, his skin crawling with the memory of those pale hands dragging at his body. Every tree looked the same, black trunks, stretching endlessly in all directions, their branches weaving together into a cage. He had no sense of where he was going, only the desperate need to move. The whisper followed him. Sometimes it came from behind, sometimes from the left, sometimes from deep inside his own chest. Stay, the single word, repeated like the beat of a drum, never louder than beat, but never gone. The forest seemed to hum with it, as though the trees themselves breathed the word into the night. At last he collapsed against a rotting log, clutching his side, lungs burning. The flashlight in his hand was dead, nothing more than a useless weight. He dropped it and pressed his face into his palms, shaking. For the first time, he let the thought creep in the thought that maybe he wouldn't leave this place. Maybe no one did. Then came another sound, footsteps, soft, deliberate, not his. Daniel's head snapped up. He peered into the dark, straining to see, but the shadows held their secrets. He held his breath. The footsteps drew closer, crunching the soil, snapping twigs, until they stopped just beyond his sight. Daniel. The voice froze him in place. It was Andrew's again, clear, familiar, too familiar. Andrew, his voice cracked on the name. Is it you? Silence. Then the footsteps began again, circling, always just out of sight. His brother's voice whispered from one side, "Help me." Then from the other, "I can't get out." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He staggered to his feet, turning in frantic circles. "Where are you? Show yourself." The forest answered with laughter, not loud but quiet, broken, spilling from the trees themselves. The laughter bent and cracked until it became a sob, then a scream, then silence again. Daniel backed against the log, shaking, when suddenly the ground before him split open. From the crack rose something small, hunched, its shape trembling in the faint moonlight. It crawled forward on its hands and knees, dragging itself through the dirt. "Andrew," Daniel whispered again. The thing lifted its head. For a moment, it was Andrew's face, his brother's eyes, wide and glistening, his mouth opening in a plea. But the lips tore as they moved, skin peeling like paper, revealing black gums and teeth too many to count. The voice that came out was layered with screams. "Stay!" Daniel screamed and stumbled backward. The creature lunged, but as it did, the earth swallowed it whole, pulling it back down into the soil as though the forest had yanked on a leash. The ground sealed again, leaving nothing but damp leaves and silence. Daniel's chest heaved. His legs shook so badly he could barely stand. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but where could he go? Every path looked the same. Every step deeper only seemed to circle him back to the same place. He forced himself forward again, weaving between trees until the air grew thicker. The forest floor sloped downward, leading him into a hollow where the fog hung heavy. At its center stood something that froze him in place, a cabin. It was small, ancient, the wood black, with rot, but inside, faint light glowed flickering, like a lantern. Daniel hesitated, every instinct screaming not to enter. Yet something in him, a thread of hope, or perhaps the forest's pull dragged him forward. The door creaked as he pushed it open. The smell of mildew and ash hit him instantly. The floorboards groaned beneath his weight as he stepped inside. The cabin was nearly bare, save for a table at the center and scraps of paper scattered across it. The lantern sat on the table, burning faintly. Next to it lay a notebook. Daniel picked it up with trembling hands. The cover was leather, old and cracking, stained dark. He opened it, squinting at the cramped handwriting inside. The first page read, "It doesn't let you leave." He turned the pages, scanning line after line. It takes your face, it makes you hear them, it pulls you into the ground. Every time you fight, it learns you better. On one page, scrawled so violently the ink tore the paper, were two words repeated over and over. "We stayed." Daniel's stomach twisted. His hands shook as he flipped further. At the very back of the book was a single phrase written large. "The forest remembers you." The lantern dimmed suddenly. Daniel dropped the notebook and spun. The cabin door had shut behind him. And from the corners of the cabin, voices began to whisper all at once. Some were strangers, some were children. One was Andrew. They whispered the same word together, over and over, until it drowned out Daniel's thoughts. "Stay, stay."